Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Committee on Higher Education, Finance, and Policy to order. I would note again that our Democrat colleagues have not come to the table. They haven't come to work, but we do have a full complement of Republicans with one on her way as she is finishing up a press conference right now. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
I read the minutes from the last meeting, and I would move that, Chair Rarick.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay, and I will note again that all the Republican members are here. One is on her way, so she will be here shortly. We do have quorum. We have asked the Office of Higher Education to come and present, and I see that they are not here. So we will move forward with our agenda. Unfortunately, again, the governor is letting us know that the agencies will not be coming to do their overviews. So in lieu of that, we have some great testifiers and great information coming forward, members and public. We have the University of Minnesota research presentation that will be coming forward. So I would invite them to come forward. And as they do, I'm going to just briefly mention that members in your packets, I do have the committee rules. I'd ask for you to read those. We won't go through all of that in detail, but it's on also the committee website. So the rules are posted and they're in your folders. So I am very excited to hear from the University of Minnesota, and they're going to talk about some of their innovative, amazing research. Very excited to have them here. Looks like we have 3 members from the University of Minnesota. So if you would state your name for the record and let us know what you've been doing at the University of Minnesota.
Okay, thank you, Chair Rarick, committee members, for the invitation to talk to you today. I'm Kimberly Kirkpatrick from the Research and Innovation Office, and I'm here with my colleagues to talk to you about research and innovation at the University of Minnesota. So the University of Minnesota is a leading American research university. We actually run an over $1 billion research enterprise that benefits the state and creates opportunities for our students.
Ms. Kirkpatrick, can you pull the microphone closer to you? It's a little hard to hear you.
Yeah, is that better? Are we getting there?
There we go.
There
now we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Please continue, Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Yes, so we are an over $1 billion research enterprise that benefits the state and creates opportunities for our students. We also drive a lot of economic growth, and our most recent economic impact study is indicating $11.5 billion in annual economic impact from the whole of the university, of which research is a part of. I also want to share with you today, and we'll show you some really great examples of how our researchers are really innovators. And one place where you'll see that is we'll talk to you about the startups that come out of the university and the fact that we are actually the largest source of startups in the state. Let me start, though, by just kind of giving you an overview of our campuses. So we are currently a system of 5 campuses. We are looking into expansion to St. Cloud for a potential 6th campus. Each of our campuses has a little bit different feel to it in terms of the research emphasis. So we have Crookston, which focuses on agricultural innovation. We have Morris, that focuses more on innovative energy, wind energy research. Then, of course, Duluth, which you may well know, with Lake Superior there, is focused on natural resource and water research. And then down at Rochester, which you'll hear a little bit more about in the next part, is innovative health-focused research, particularly surrounding undergraduate programming, and the partnership with Mayo Clinic. Now, our Twin Cities campus is the flagship campus of the 5 campuses. We have a very comprehensive, very large research program. We are a Research One campus, which means that we have the highest level of research of any kind of group of universities in the country. We also are a public land grant, and we have UN extension in all of the Minnesota counties, all 87. And I'll just note as well that one real benefit of our Twin Cities campus is its co-location in a larger ecosystem of Fortune 500 companies and many other companies as well. In fact, you'll hear a lot about the partnerships that we are building with companies and really benefiting from in our research. We are at heart driven to discover. It is our fundamental mission. And what we really mean by that is that we seek to use research to discover new treatments to cure disease. We seek to discover new innovations that can solve the problems that affect people's everyday lives. That is our fundamental mission in our research. And I want to start off our conversation today by showing you a video. This is a really nice display of just some of the kind of more famous university research discoveries, but how these really have impacted the everyday lives of Minnesotans. So I'll start with playing our video here. It's just about 2.5 minute video. So I think you see a kind of diversity of different impacts and the way that those just integrate into everyday lives of our citizens here in Minnesota, but also around the world as well. Which brings me kind of to the next thing that I want to talk to you about, which is the really world-class research that we do at the university and the way that we have broader impacts that are recognized worldwide. So as of 2024, we were actually ranked number 10 U.S. public university in the world among the academic ranking of world universities. And I also want to note that not only are we 10 overall, but we really have some strong excellence in a number of our individual programs. I just listed a few of our really highly rated programs. These are all top 10. So you can see kind of diversity as well. So we have anything from ecology, psychology, medical technology, veterinary science, economics, and biotechnology is really highly rated disciplines. These ratings measure our impact that we have and our excellence in our research programs. In addition to being really excellent in some of our individual disciplines, we also are recognized for our interdisciplinary research. Interdisciplinary research actually refers to research where people from multiple different research fields have to come together and work together to solve a problem from multiple angles. These interdisciplinary research projects oftentimes are really trying to tackle really difficult challenges that you might not be able to solve from just a single discipline. And we actually in 2024 were ranked as the #1 U.S. public interdisciplinary research university in the world. And this is really a tribute, I think, to our 300 plus centers and institutes at the university, which bridge across different disciplinary programs and really drive that excellence. Next, I'll kind of turn to showing you just the size of our program. So in addition to being a really world-class, excellent research program, we also are one of the largest in the country. And we can measure the size of our program with something that's known as research expenditure. This is actually published by the National Science Foundation in their annual survey, the most recent publication being from 2023. And you can see, looking at our HERD survey data, that our research expenditure, which is a kind of measure of the amount of research activity we're engaging in, has been steadily growing. We actually had $1.32 billion in overall research expenditure in 2023. Our whole system had $1.35 billion. So that's very, very large amount of research expenditure, and that actually places us number 12 among U.S. publics. I want to also note, if you look at the purple bar, you can see that's our federal funding that we're bringing into the university. So that is our largest source of funding, accounts for the majority of our research funding. And our largest single funder is the National Institutes of Health. I also want to note that those federal dollars and other dollars that we bring in for research, they get spent here in Minnesota. And they're used to hire talented staff, they're used to purchase supplies, and many other kind of indirect economic impacts. And so research is a significant contributor to that $11.5 billion economic impact that I told you about in the opening. Now I want to turn and just highlight a couple of examples, maybe that make this a little bit more tangible. So you can see some specific research projects that have been funded more recently, that are really trying to tackle some of these big problems oftentimes from interdisciplinary perspectives. So one of our recent funded grants is the Clinical and Translational Science Institute, or CTSI. This was funded last year for a 7-year, $59.2 million award. This is from the National Institutes of Health. This is actually one of the largest federal awards that we've ever received in the whole history of the university. And what's really special about the CTSI is that they really focus on trying to take the kind of amazing research that happens at the university and translate it and to accelerate it into actually turning into actual treatments that we can apply in the clinic. And they do this by providing support for clinical trial research infrastructure, among other things. I think fundamentally their commitment is to take research and really use it to have a meaningful impact on people's lives. And ultimately, we see this as a way to really promote a healthy Minnesota. Another big grant that I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of is the Forever Green initiative. This is an initiative that aims to develop new sustainable crops to create sustainable agriculture and low carbon solutions. This is one that's kind of interesting because it started off with the State of Minnesota Department of Agriculture grant for $5 million. And they were able to use that grant to be able to do some of the foundational development research that then they could leverage to be able to bring in additional funding, which have included a $2.5 million award supported by Cargill Foundation, or by the Cargill Company, and then another $10 million award that just came through this month from the Department of Energy. Their goal is to develop innovative crops for winter cover crop. So, for example, winter camelina and winter pennycrust are two. They actually have over 15 in development now. And these crops are used to make seed-based oils for low-carbon transportation fuels. So sustainable aviation fuels is one example. You may have heard about the Delta flight that use these. But I think the other thing that's really important from this is that they also create economic impact for farmers. So, normally, farmers' fields just sort of idle in the winter. But now they can grow these winter cover crops and actually sell them, harvesting them in the spring for these sustainable fuel production. And so it creates a new revenue stream for the farmers and for the rural communities. I will just say, too, that it has this added benefit that it enhances the soil health and reduces erosion. So it doesn't compete at all with their normal farming crops. Instead, it actually enhances those normal farming practices. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague who's going to tell you about the next portion of our presentation.
So thank you. We're going to take a little pause here since you have finished up your part of the presentation. I know we have a few questions, so we're just going to do that at this juncture, and then we'll do it after the next testifier. I know that we've got a few questions on the committee. I'm going to ask a couple just to start off, and then we're going to go, I think, to Representative Allen, correct? And Representative Novotny, do you have questions as well? No? Okay. So just really quickly, when you showed the video, I was watching it, and you had things like renewable plastic and wheat that you were developing and some advanced energy things. Those are things I'm interested in. So one, for what is renewable plastic? Is that like a biodegradable plastic or, okay, so it's a biodegradable plastic.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of coming out of a lot of our biotechnology focus.
Okay. So then, Ms. Kirkpatrick, so the wheat that you were discussing, so something has happened to our wheat worldwide, and it's been so hybridized that it is barely tolerable for most humans to consume. Are you trying to go back to something that is much more easily digestible? So since we have a skyrocketing issues with allergies and celiac and other things that cannot tolerate this mass hybridization of wheat. So is this going back to a more, natural or like the original, like an heirloom type of wheat?
Well, I'll just say, first of all, I don't actually do the research that I'm talking about today. So, I can speak to our kind of global impact and our programs. In terms of specific details of specific research projects, we'd be very happy to go and gather more details and follow up with you about those.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkpatrick. I'm sure you'll get lots of questions today, or the team will get lots of questions today that you won't be able to answer, that we are hoping that you'll be bringing back, because we are giving the University of Minnesota full 3 days, which is unprecedented, in addition to today, to go through fully what you do there and the budget and how things are spent. So I'm just going to ask one more question, then I'm going to turn it over to Representative Allen, because I know he has quite a few questions, specifically in the ag area, if that's where he's headed. The other thing I was going to ask in relation to the wheat and what I had already described is when you're talking about these, the NIH grants with advanced health research, and you're trying to look at how to make Americans healthier, which is obviously a really hot topic right now, thanks to some very big people that are now following Trump into office. So are we discussing things like the heavy toxic load in our food, in our American food versus literally anywhere else in the world? Are we talking about also in our air and our water, all of the pharmaceuticals that land in our water in particular, when you talk about some of the wastewater treatment plants that literally can't get it back out? Are we talking about those types of things, or what exactly are we talking about when you're talking about the things on the slide about your NIH grants, advanced health research?
Yeah, again, we can get you some fine details of specific research programs if you kind of give us a list of specific topics you're interested in. But I would say one benefit of the U being so large of a program is that we kind of have somebody studying pretty much everything. So although we may not be able to get a really fine detail of something that you're asking, my guess is that we do have research going on in that general vein, and we could certainly share it with you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkpatrick. Yes. So I think that not only this committee, the public, I can tell you my own grandchildren, are affected by food dyes, for example. And my daughter-in-law literally said, Mom, are you going to get the food dyes out of the food so that our children aren't poisoned? So I think anything that you're working on that actually is making America healthier that is actually getting the poisons out of our food, out of our water, out of our air, out of our soil. That's what we're interested in. I think I can speak for my health committee that is what we're interested in. We're not interested in another pharmaceutical fix to a problem that was caused by our American lifestyle. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Minnesota, class of 2000. It's going there, I have quite a bit of experience as far as what's happening and what's going on typically in the ins and outs. Wanted to follow up with one of your slides talking on winter camelina, winter pennycrest. I know you guys have been doing a fair amount of research throughout the state of Minnesota on those particular products. Where is the market to sell those kinds of products?
Yeah, well, I will just say, first of all, that is a long-term goal of this research. So although at this stage, there's still a lot of development to do before we get to that point, there is a long-term goal that this will be market-driven project as opposed to being driven by state subsidies long-term. I think that, that's something that we probably will know more on as we go down the road. And again, we can follow up with the team and try to get some more specific details about where they think that's going.
Okay,
Representative Allen.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Eric. That's the whole thing with a lot of the projects that come out is usually there's markets for it, right? You guys develop apples, there's a market instantly for apples. Same thing with the grapes you guys have done for wine, but it's kind of a lacking area. The follow-up question I had for you was, pertaining to one of the research sites that you guys currently have down in Rosemount, Minnesota, there's been quite a bit of sale of property, mineral rights going out for, I think there's a rock crushing plant and whatnot down there. Just kind of wondering, where did the money that currently came out of the sale of some of the Rosemount ground and the mineral rights on that, where did it go? Did it flow back into CFANS? Did it flow back into the general fund? Would you happen to have any answers on that?
Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I don't actually have details on that with me today. Our goal today was to give a broad overview of the program, but again, we'd be happy to gather more information for you.
Okay.
Representative Allen?
And I'm good for the time being. So.
The time being, okay. And Representative Robbins, did you have a question? Okay. Okay, so I have one final one. It's very simple, I promise. So back on the slide when you have all of the funding that has come in, I'm curious as to, with the $1.32 billion that has come in 2023, how much of that came from the state of Minnesota? So I know that you get research money, kind of little drips and drops all over the state budget. Some of it comes through legacy money, some of it comes through other sources. And do you happen to know what that, is it a blue bar? The blue bar represents. Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Varick. Yes, I think I don't have the exact amount written down, but I think it was over $100 billion. I think this last year in funding. I think it usually runs something around 8 to 10%. But again, we can get you the exact dollar number. I just don't have that written down in my notes on the slide.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkpatrick. Yes, so I believe it was for that biennium. It was 90 million and some change, I believe is one, because I had them pull a spreadsheet for me from all the different sources that are outside of this committee area. It is something that is lightly or rarely or not talked about is, you applies for lots and lots of research grants and so on. And the information back is a little light. And so that's part of the reason why we'd love to have you here today. And I know you've got certain things you want to talk about, which is fantastic. The last question I'm going to ask you before I'll have you go on is in the other category. What would be in the other category? It's quite a large part of the bar. Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Varick. Yes, the other category is really a mix of funding from several different sources. Some of it comes from foundations. Some comes from subawards from like subcontracts from other universities, which may be federal or non-federal sponsored projects that they then contract us to do research with them for solving maybe particular things that we have expertise on. And then some of that may actually be internal funding from the university that like we give out sometimes seed grants and other grants, startup funds for faculty and things of that like.
Okay. Thank you. Right. And so the federal money is totally and solely NIH, or is there something else contained within the, because I know sometimes you get DOD and DOE money as well. Is it in that 23, is that all NIH money, Ms. Kirkpatrick?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Eric. No, that purple bar is actually a combination of NIH, NSF, and many other federal agencies, including Department of Energy, DOD, and others. So that's our total federal dollars.
Okay, very good. Any other questions from the committee before we move forward? Seeing none, if the next testifier would introduce yourself to the committee and then proceed with your presentation.
Chair Eric, members of committee. Chair Eric and members of committee. My name is Jun Cho from Research and Innovation Office. The University of Minnesota is a leader in research that addresses both global and local challenges. However, we recognize that solving grand challenges cannot be done alone. Collaboration is essential. Through our partnerships, we tackle real-world problems that impact industries and communities, drive economic growth, and strengthen Minnesota's workforce, expand funding, opportunities, and accelerate innovation to benefit the state. Next, we'll highlight specific examples how these partnerships translate into impactful research and innovation. Universities' research collaborations span across multiple industries, governments, and communities, reinforcing Minnesota's position as a hub for technological and scientific innovation. Some key areas of partnership include Natural Resources Research Institute, located in Duluth, Minnesota, is advancing technologies to enhance efficiencies beginning on Minnesota's Iron Range and benefiting American companies. In collaboration with U.S. Steel and other industry partners, this work is supported by the state of Minnesota and U.S. Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory. With 3M, advanced materials research that directly supports Minnesota's growing manufacturing sector. They also employ several thousand highly skilled universities graduates. Just past December, Medtronic and the university announced a new research partnership in medical device and biotechnology research, fostering new advancements in patient care and healthcare technology. The SCALE program, supported by the U.S. Department of Defense and regional industry leaders, including Collins Aerospace, Lockheed Martin, Honeywell, Polar Semiconductor, and Skywater Technology, provides students with hands-on experience in high-demand microelectronics industries. Through this initiative, we also collaborate with Metro State University and the University of St. Thomas to further expand educational and training opportunities. With Cisco, there are active research projects in AI, edge computing, and cybersecurity, critical fields for the future of digital infrastructures. Finally, my colleague Kim shared the Forever Green initiative earlier. This example amplifies the university's leadership in partnership with the state government to drive groundbreaking research on innovation crops, to advance soil water health, build new markets, and support farmers in rural communities. With support from the U.S. Department of Energy, Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and Cargill, this work positions Minnesota as a leader in sustainable aviation fuels and advanced agriculture. Research at university doesn't stop at discovery. It extends onto commercialization, startup creation, and workforce development. Our partnerships fuel the broader research and economic ecosystem by attracting increased research funding and workforce development opportunities, strengthen corporate and government investment in innovation, generating a greater impact on both state and national economic growth. In the next section, we'll dive into how Minnesota's innovation drive technology commercialization and economic development, making Minnesota a leader in cutting-edge research and entrepreneurship. Chair Eric, my colleague Rick Shipp will present the next section of the presentation.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and continue with the testimony.
Yes, thank you, Chair Eric and members of the committee. Rick Hipsch, University of Minnesota. As was highlighted earlier, at the University of Minnesota, we're driven to discover, and many of those research discoveries turn into innovations. And to make these successful, we have to have the innovators. And the innovators are researchers, the innovators are the students, the innovators are the talent that make these things go forward. As you can see in the many pictures, we've got a lot of students, but we have specifically a lot of innovators at the University of Minnesota, and we have to continue to attract and retain those innovators. These are just 4 examples of individuals who got their degrees at the University of Minnesota, went all the way through to get their PhDs at Minnesota, and are now key members and founders of many of our favorite startup companies. We've got an example in the MRI space with Adialante, in the neuromodulation space with Second Wave, in the PFAS destruction bioproducts space with Claros, and then Niron Magnetics, which we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes. But these are all examples of proud University of Minnesota graduates that are having a huge impact on these companies, and that happens because of their impact and their PhDs at the University of Minnesota. We have many noteworthy innovations. You saw many of them in the video. Pretty much all of these appeared in the video, and it shows the diversity of impact. As my colleagues have talked about, we really have not only the depth of research, but the breadth of research that can really have those significant impacts and long-lasting impacts. We have things that happened in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and many of these that have happened in the very recent past. These are things that we can all be proud of as being part of the University of Minnesota. My office or my team at the University of Minnesota is responsible for technology commercialization. As part of a R1 research institute, a very large research institution, we have a lot of research, that billion-dollar plus research, some of which turns into innovations, and some of those innovations will be, in turn, have an impact on people's lives. So our job at the university is to help transfer that research. We get approximately an idea a day that comes through our office, and out of that, some portion of that becomes intellectual property, things that can then be turned over to the public, or to the private sector to make into goods and services. These have a triple mission. We are trying to benefit and have an impact on the society, so benefiting the public good. We are trying to impact and drive economic growth in the state of Minnesota and beyond. And some small portion of that does generate some revenue, and that's really the idea of having a title to the research and title to the intellectual property that's sponsored by this research. And so that helps generate some money for the university's mission. We're very well recognized. There's very few technology transfer offices in the nation that have the productivity that we have, certainly based on the amount of research and staff that we have. Since 2006, we've had 270 startup companies. We've got many active patents and licenses that we're managing, and we've had some really good success, which we'll talk about here. This is just a bar chart. Everybody has their bar charts that go up and to the right, and ours is very productive. And I think the real message here is we continue to have a strong pipeline. That happens by having a strong, large, productive a research institution that has a great culture for innovation. And there's only a handful, less than 5 universities in the nation that produce 20 or more startups a year, and we're one of those. We had a record level of startups in 2024. We've had 270, and we're really the largest single source of startups in Minnesota. When I talk about dual impact here, we're really talking about both a societal impact and an economic impact. Our discoveries are going after those really important and pressing challenges, everything from helping save human lives to providing food and ag production to educating our students to solving some of the challenges with the environment. And so all of these challenges are part of what we're focused on. And it's really driven by what can make sense as a business. These businesses have to survive on their own. They get out into the world, they have to raise money, and they have to sell products and services. Of the number of startups that we have, amazingly, 70% of them are located in Minnesota, way above average. If you've met our new recent President Cunningham, she will talk about the difference between her prior institution, Michigan, and the University of Minnesota. Having 70% is way above average, having them located in the state of Minnesota, and having them survive in 5+ years, that survival rate is extremely high. It's certainly challenging. Anybody that's been involved in startups or business know that raising money is extremely challenging right now and getting those early stage investments. But our collective efforts as a state, as a region, working with the private sector, we believe this can continue to grow and prosper, really, and flourish. The one example I want to leave you with today here is Nyron Technologies, Nyron Magnetics. It's a strong company, a company that was launched from the University of Minnesota based on research in the electrical engineering department by Professor Jinping Wang. And the technology really solves a couple of really key problems. It is replacing what in many cases, in many applications, are using rare earth minerals to make permanent magnets for many applications, including electronics and electric vehicles, among others. And this is both an environmental solution, but more importantly, it's a national security issue because most of the rare earth magnets, rare earth minerals are controlled by China. So this is an alternative, a very strong alternative, and this is something that has received a lot of support from the federal government, but a lot of support from the state of Minnesota as well. It's been highly acclaimed. They had a very large launch of the large facility. They have the pilot plant in North Minneapolis, and over 100 jobs there, or approximately 100 jobs there. But more importantly, building a full-scale pilot or scale-up plant starting this year in Sartell, Minnesota, with 175 jobs projected, and someday over 300 jobs projected, all in the state of Minnesota. And so this is a really good example of something that had its seed at the University of Minnesota that's having societal impact, but also economic impact. So in summary, the messages that we want to leave you with today and what we started out with is the University of Minnesota is not just a large university, but a leading research university. And with that greater than $1 billion research enterprise, that has an impact both on society, but also in the opportunities that it creates for students and the economic impact for the state. The researchers are the innovators. We certainly partner closely with the private sector. We believe the private sector is the right place to produce the products and services, but researchers are the innovators, and the University of Minnesota is the largest source of startup companies in the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I believe we have a question from Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, a question to you, Madam Chair. It says on our agenda that we're going to be hearing from someone from the medical school. Are we going to, is that true?
We are.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yes, I was going to call you Chair Scott. So yes, Representative Scott, since I'm the chair, it gets confusing. I know, remember throughout the years, they would call each other chair, and it's very confusing. But Representative Scott, yes, we have the Mayo Clinic and the partnership with the University of Minnesota coming up next.
Okay, perfect. I'll reserve some of my questions for that. But I do have a question about the Nyron Magnetics. How do those products compare in price to rare earth magnetics?
Mr. Hipst?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rarick. Committee Member Scott. Yes, the idea with these rare earth, non-rare earth magnets is that they would be very price competitive, and that it's not driven by subsidies. These are driven because they're competitive both in their strength. So they measure magnets on their strength and their size, but also in the cost to make them. In fact, the materials that are going into them, the feedstock, if you will, for these magnets is much cheaper than going through the rare earth magnets. So the supply side is going to be cheaper. It is just getting the scale up on the manufacturing. That's what they're doing right now, is just being able to do the scale up so that they have both the strength and the efficiency on the cost front. So they should be not any more expensive than the rare earth ones.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's fascinating. I think this is very fascinating. As we know, a lot of these rare earth minerals are gotten from places where they use child and other slave labor, and it's really bothersome to me that that in the pursuit of green energy that we're doing that on the backs of children and slaves. I also had a question about, there's just a lot out there about China taking intellectual property. Mm-hmm. And what does the university do to prevent that from happening at the university, if you will?
Mr. Hipst.
Yes, Chair Rarick, Committee Member Scott. Yes, the university practices all of the same intellectual property protections in general that corporations do and other universities do, in that we file protections in all of the various countries that are needed to take these products to market. The one difference about academic institutions is they're more open, and there's students and professors and those types of things. We have done a significant amount of training of our faculty that they understand, what the rules are at the university. We have all kinds of rules and regulations in our grant administration to look at who is involved in each of the parts of the research project. And we're happy to come back with more information if you'd like it, but, we're definitely, especially since all of this funding, a large portion of this funding comes from federal and state authorities, the amount of regulations that they've asked us to comply as effort reporting and many other things that we're doing with these grants, a lot of that can be driven by some of the concerns on intellectual property and other aspects.
Representative Scott.
Thank you. Just stating the obvious here. Thank you for your answer. We don't want something like the Niron magnetics. We don't want that technology to be stolen, and by China. China's usually the bad actor here. That's what I'm sure there are others, but we hear mostly about them. But we certainly don't want that kind of technology being stolen when we've put taxpayer monies, federal, state, whatever. It's all our money. When we've put that kind of money into a technology like that. So thank you for your answering the question.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Any other questions from the committee? Representative Robbins.
Thanks, Chair Eric.
Oh, I'm sorry. I recognize Representative Robbins. I will get to you next, Paul. Representative Novotny. We'll start with Representative Robbins.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. This is one of my favorite topics. I really care about the U as an economic engine for the state, as a driver of competitiveness, and as an engine for economic growth and innovation. And honestly, I knew a lot of this, but learned some things. It's fantastic, and we appreciate all that you do. But I do think it's a little bit hard for, like, all of us, we're out in our communities all the time, and we see innovators, and it's hard for them sometimes to access the university, especially if they're not from here. And I had a situation in my district probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, where they had an incredible innovative technology. I set up tours with them at the U. We worked on it, and nothing really happened. they ended up moving to Utah, and they're in a really strong partnership with a university in Utah now. So, I mean, maybe the fail's on me. I'm not sure what it is, but how do we help the amazing entrepreneurial culture of innovators we have in this state connect in the right places with the U so that we can drive even more of these partnerships? Because I think we're probably just scratching the surface of what we could be doing, and I'd love to be part of pushing that forward.
Mr. Hibst?
Yes, Chair Rarick, Committee Member Robbins. Yes, thank you for that question. I would hope, since it's 5 or 6 years ago, that things have changed, but I would appreciate, and maybe we can follow up separately. I would say a couple of things that the university really leans into the community. A couple of examples. One would be through our Minnesota Cup environment. Many of you are familiar with that process. That's actually a statewide competition. It's not even a metro area competition. It's a statewide competition of innovators from across the entire state, and that's kind of an on-ramp, if you will, to being the resources that are available. The second example I would say is in the last 5 years is all of the work that's being done through Launch Minnesota, which is part of the Department of Employment and Economic Development. I'm a board advisor on that committee, and that also allows people from the state of Minnesota, not necessarily just researchers at the University of Minnesota, to really plug into a very large ecosystem. And it has kind of a hub and spoke model, so there are 6 regions throughout the state. And all of those things allow entrepreneurs across the state, as you say, no matter where they're located, to really plug into the state's ecosystem. And we're part of that state ecosystem. So,
Representative Robbins?
Thank you. I would just appreciate a follow-up discussion on that sometime when you have time, just to help me understand, because I've had 3 different things in my district where we're trying to make connections, and and maybe it's not right, maybe like it's not a good fit or whatever. I totally respect your professional judgment on that, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything as a connector. So thank you.
Representative Novotny?
Thank you, Chair Rarick. And Representative Scott brought up the idea of these, the intellectual products and the research and development that's going on. You have all these patents that are worked on. Can you really help us understand what happens with these patents that are developed? Obviously, if you do 10 or 100, you might get one that works. If we have these nylon, these new magnet designs, there's rare earth magnets in everything in this room that we use today. If we have that replacement, that's got the ability to really take off. So what happens to that patent? Who actually owns the patent when Microsoft comes along and were to buy that for $1 gazillion? What happens to that money? How are these patents managed, and where does that money go? As Representative Scott said, everyone in this room has made a contribution to the facilities where they're developed and paid for the professors and all that. So what are we getting for our investment, and what's the return?
Mr. Hibst?
yes, thank you, Chair Rarick and Representative Novotny. The process by which the research is done, the research is funded by a variety of entities, and as you saw in those bar charts, including the federal government being the largest portion of it, the university gets title or ownership to those patents, and so we file 150 to 200 patents a year. The expenses for those patents, come out of our budget, and then a portion of those can be licensed. And when technology is patented or copyrighted or trademarked, that becomes part of the university is not creating the products or services, they're creating the technology. And then the companies, whether they're a startup company or whether they're an existing company like the 3Ms and the Cargills and the Medtronics, they're taking the university's intellectual property and building products and services. And then they have a right to practice those under U.S. patent law for 20 years, and they get the benefits of that. To actually make those products and services, our patents and copyrights and trademarks are only a portion of what ends up I mean, it's rare, even in the case of the Niron technology, for that 1 or 2 or 3 patents that we might file is in the end product. The end product is a composition of tens of patents or hundreds of patents. So in exchange for them licensing is basically the agreement, they agree to provide us some small amounts of royalties, and it's those royalties that then come back to the university. The university's policy, it's published public policy, is basically that it's a third of this goes, of any royalties would go back to the inventors. It's part of the incentive at the University of Minnesota and every university. A third of it goes to the department or college, you know, for new research and additional research, possibly in that researcher's lab. And then a third of it goes, part of it goes to fund our office as a part of paying for the patents and many other things that we do in the staff that we have. And so that's part of what the incentive is for universities. And way back in 1980, they created the Bayh-Dole Act at the federal level. And the idea was, rather than the funders of these ideas, the NIHs, the NSF, and others, and having the U.S. government create title, they gave title to the university. And so that's maybe more than you asked, but that's the background. And so as products come to market, a portion of that can come back to the university in the form of royalties.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, and no, thank you for going as deep as you did. Then my follow-up question is that a sustainable amount that you guys consider into your budget, or is that added on to everything?
Mr. Hipst.
Yeah, Chair Rarick and Representative Novotny, it is a supplemental portion. It is not the entire budget. It's a relatively, meaningful amount, but it's not a large amount, and it varies quite substantially from year to year. So it's a little bit unpredictable.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Rarick. Okay, let's do it this way then. How much did the department raise from royalties in 2024? Rough guess.
Mr. Hipst.
Yeah, Chair Rarick and Representative Novotny. We actually published it on our website, and so it runs anywhere from 10 to 20 million a year for the entire university that gets split up into those pieces that I described. And so we publish those numbers every year. Yep.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One more question, and is the university, and I could probably ask you this about 10 different topics, but is the university that you know of doing any research right now on solar and wind recycling efforts? It's right now we're just dumping this stuff or shipping it out of state, and I'm just wondering if the university is doing any research on that.
Mr. Hipst.
Chair Rarick, excuse me, and Representative Scott. The university has research in lots of different areas. We have research that's being done at the University of Minnesota in Morris that is specifically looking at utilizing that energy at that campus. But I think for any more detail on that, we would have to follow up.
Mr. Hipst, that'd be great. I know that you'll be getting questions today, and I appreciate that you won't be able to answer. And you do get 3 additional days to use to answer these questions back and talk about the budget ask and how you've used the budgets that we've already given. And let's see who else had yes, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before this, I was on the AFREC Council, which dealt with research dollars that flowed into the University of Minnesota, CFANS. And that kind of this is where that question kind of stems from, and this is to the whole entire panel. Of the research dollars that you take in typically, what is the total research requests versus the requests that actually get funded? Would you happen to know that off the top of your head?
Just seeing if anybody on the panel would have that, or is that something you'd like to bring back to us? You're going to make a long list of questions, I'm sure. It's a good thing. We're all very interested in the University of Minnesota and the research that you do. It's a good thing. Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you, Chair Rarick. I think we'd have to get you the exact amount in terms of if you're asking about like what percentage of the things we propose, like proposals we submit, actually get funded. I would guess that we're somewhere in the 15 to 20% success rate, but that's really an educated guess, just based on the amount of traffic that we see running through our office in terms of proposals and awards. We could get you a more exact amount as a follow-up.
Representative Allen.
Madam Chair, the other frustration that I've seen for some time is the amount of researcher turnover. I think back to Norman Borlaug. He was probably one of the most, Dr. Borlaug was one of the most impactful individuals within the CFANS organization and what he was able to do. And losing those researchers is always a huge concern for a lot of us within the agriculture field. And I'm just kind of wondering, what's your annual turnover rate of like researchers and professors that are within the doing that kind of work? And if you don't happen to have the answer today, that's okay. I'm more than happy.
Representative Allen, I'm going to guess that they won't have that at the top of their heads, but they are making a list of questions. And members, this is exactly what we should be doing in committee. And we've got some new members, Representative Allen and Representative Schwartz. It's fantastic. This is what we should be doing. And we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't ask you a bunch of questions that you couldn't answer on the spot. So this shows incredible interest and appreciation for what the U does. And so I'm going to turn it back over. I'm going to just assume they don't know that. But Representative Allen, do you have additional questions?
Yes.
Representative Allen.
Thank you, Chair. The other question it was piggybacking off of that is of the researchers that you do know of that end up transferring out of the University of Minnesota system. If you had an idea of if it was private industry they were going into, if it was going to other research institutions like Florida State or Texas A&M or whatever it is, it'd be or other institutions like that. I mean, it'd be very helpful.
Mr. Hipst, or do you want to bring that answer back?
Yes, so Chair Rarick and Representative Allen, I think the general trends is there is a lot of movement between universities. It's something we definitely see, both in the case that you're talking about with key researchers. I do think a small number, a very small number, go to the private sector, so it's not unheard of. I will highlight one real quick example, which I think is a very positive example. In the case of CFANS, we had a 30-year professor that has joined Yard Biosciences, and Professor Linda Kinkle, and she helped create the technology, and she became so passionate about it she wanted to join the company. So yes, it hurts to lose those good professors, but she stayed in Minnesota, and the company is on a really good trajectory. It's a good company for you to follow. Thank you.
Representative Allen.
Thank you for that.
Okay, any final questions on this segment? Because we do have two more presentations. Representative Schwartz.
Yes, hi. What would cause a research project to be abandoned?
Anybody good? Okay. Ms. Kirkpatrick?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you, Chair Rarick. I think there can be many reasons why a project could potentially be abandoned. Probably the chief of which would be that maybe there's just sometimes don't get the results that you expected. So when you go into a project, it's much like, I'm a gardener. I don't know if any of you are gardeners, but you sort of plant your seeds and do your best and hope that they grow into something really great. But sometimes it just doesn't. Maybe the things don't line up just right, or maybe the idea that you had turns out just wasn't the right one. There can be other reasons as well, though. I mean, you might run into barriers. For example, if there's not able to get the resources that are needed, not able to get the talent that's needed, those can sometimes create challenges. But probably the number one reason would be that if things just aren't working, knowing our researchers, though, I would guess they probably wouldn't be so likely to abandon, but more they would pivot. And they would find another angle to tackle it from, rather than just all out giving up, because we tend to be very stubborn and persistent in our work.
Representative Schwartz.
Okay.
I do have a follow-up question. So I represent the rural area, in Nicollet County, and within my county, I do have a farming business where a family produces and processes pork. And when I was speaking with them, they said that they are very frustrated at the fact that they rely on research, U of M research, to help them with the regulations to keep their business going. And they said they are frustrated because it seems to be a lot of the research that they're counting on has been abandoned. So I was just wondering if you can get me like the data and the information on why what would cause that and why they are frustrated. I'd really like to know.
Yeah, Representative
Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Schwartz. Yeah, Representative Schwartz, Chair Eric, thank you for that question. I'm very sorry to hear about that example. I think that would be certainly something we would need to dig into more to find out the facts that we can provide back to you.
That'd be great. I'll be looking forward for that.
Okay, members, thank you, panel, so much from the University of Minnesota Research and Innovation Office. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure you got lots of questions you weren't expecting, and we've done our job then. So we'll see you back in February when we have 3 more days with the University of Minnesota. Thank you for your time, your expertise, and your patience with us. Thank you. All right, next up, we have the University of Minnesota Mayo Clinic Partnership. So as they are coming up, very excited. I want to say that in my 8 years, almost 10 years on this committee, 13 years in the legislature, I don't recall a presentation from the Mayo Clinic specifically about the money that the higher ed committee has in its jurisdiction for the Mayo. So this is a great interest to me, and thank you for those that have come here today. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and start your presentation.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair Rarick, for the opportunity to present to this committee today. My name is Peter Crawford. I serve as Vice Dean for Research for the Medical School of the University of Minnesota. I am partnered on my right by Dr. Nathan Wiedemann from the Mayo Clinic. We're here today to discuss the Minnesota Mayo Partnership program that has existed since 2004. And of course, we'll be delighted to answer any of your questions about the program. I'd like to take, if I may, just a privilege of acknowledging our partnership at the University of Minnesota with the Research Innovation Office, who just presented. We're very well integrated. A couple of the elements that were presented just for background that may help inform some of your questions by my colleagues in the Research Innovation Office. I'm a Deputy Director for the Clinical Translational Science Institute, that $59 million grant that we have the privilege of receiving from the National Center for Advancement of Translational Science. So I'm part of the 3-team leadership component for that grant. The Medtronic partnership that was discussed is one that I serve on the Joint Steering Committee that I had the privilege of serving with leadership at the University of Minnesota and for Medtronic and partnering and generating an initiative that is centered on artificial intelligence, robotics, and importantly relevant to questions that were raised in the prior session, sustainability and the impact on health. And questions about retention, so very important to us in the medical school of our investigators and the topics that we're investigating. I'm happy to address that as well in the course of questions. But the primary focus, of course, that we are charged to share with the committee today and have the privilege of sharing is a Minnesota Partnership for Biotechnology and Medical Genomics. So if I may have the first slide, I don't know if I'm in control of these slides.
So I asked them to come in. Thanks for the question. So they are trying to figure out the technical side of that. Apparently we have someone testifying by Zoom, and so that's why the screen is up. And so I believe what they're going to do is maybe take the Zoom screen down and go to your slides so we could see the slides.
I'll introduce my colleague from Mayo. That's Dr. Y.S. Prakash, who's my counterpart, Vice Dean for Research at Mayo.
Well, let's have him say hello since he is here. Mr. Prakash, or Dr. Prakash, please say hello, and we will come back to you after we go through these slides.
Thank you, Madam Chair Eric. I appreciate the opportunity, and I, again, value the partnership very well and look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash. All right, so as we get these up here, yeah. We will take the Zoom off and we'll bring the slides back up.
Where is your presentation?
It was sent to Lori.
We need your computer then.
Do you have the slides loaded up?
And if it pleases the chair, I'm happy to discuss in the absence of slides as well. It's your choice, of course.
So we're working on getting the slides up right now, but why don't you give us a little bit higher overview of, you had talked about the beginning of this partnership between the University of Minnesota and the Mayo Foundation. And I'm wondering, since we've literally not had a presentation to my knowledge, and the only ones that on this committee that have been here longer is Representative Scott. So I'm not sure if she's heard the presentation of how this whole partnership started. So while we're waiting for slides to come up, why don't you start us at the very beginning of how did this partnership start?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Crawford.
thank you. So the Minnesota Partnership for Biotechnology and Medical Genomics was spawned in 2003. It's a unique collaborative initiative that was formally launched in 2004 with a $2 million gift from the state of Minnesota that was matched at that time by the University of Minnesota and Mayo. The goal, the primary objective, of course, is to demonstrate the manner in which we can lead the nation by how we serve Minnesotans. So in this particular case, our goal is to serve as a world leader in biotechnology and biomedical research, improving health, saving lives, and offering economic advantages to the state. Those economic advantages are evident through a variety of mechanisms. One is workforce development, of course, which is very important and central to our missions, both at the university and at Mayo, as well as technology commercialization, the opportunity for the generation of intellectual property, associated startup companies, and acquisitions down the line. So since the first allocation in 2004, the annual appropriated amount has varied until 2015. Fiscal year 2015 to the present, we're the beneficiaries of a constant amount of nearly $8 million, just under $8 million per year legislated with each biennium. $500,000 of that is specifically allocated to Alzheimer's disease research and dementia-related research in the related families. We have 4 pillars within our funding program, within this portfolio that we have the privilege of overseeing. The first is discovery science research, which is the fundamental core elements, the basic biology that underpins disease pathogenesis. The next is translational research, that evolution of that research from the bench to the bedside, to human beings and its realization towards patients. Large projects, initiatives, and infrastructure. This is oriented towards teams that are quite well developed, that are on the cusp of a significant contribution that can be realized in the generation of intellectual property. Some of them may already have developed a component of intellectual property in their development, or they have strong foundation that allows for pushing this forward in its translation really across the spectrum from the most discovery or basic elements through patient-oriented research. Technology commercialization is the fourth pillar through which we support funding mechanisms through the Minnesota Mayo partnership. So this is oriented around teams that are already in that space of pre-commercialization or even commercialization through the prior acquisition of intellectual property protection and moving things forward assertively. And what this program allows is really a kind of an incubator for moving programs forward into commercialization that can enable that ultimate realization of improving healthcare and transforming lives. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a key partner as well of ours, and that's our University of Minnesota Rochester campus, which is cradled, obviously, next door, very nearby, our partners at Mayo. And this is a cooperative educational program training those health science innovators that help feed the kinds of research contributions that are driven. So it's that talent pipeline at UMR that helps drive our innovations forward.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. So we're still working on getting the slides up, but if you want to just keep going without the slides, or we do have the handouts in front of us that are the slides, so we can look from there.
Madam Chair, I'm delighted to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Crawford.
Madam Chair and representatives. So as a snapshot for the program, since its inception, $167 million in competitive awards has been distributed to 279 research and infrastructure projects. So this is not done without great care, without great seriousness in attaining fidelity, in expectations of milestones and metrics, and in careful recording of accomplishments across this vast amount of infrastructural investment as well as number of projects. Of this total, nearly $22 million has been invested in Alzheimer's disease and related dementia research. And you can see on your slides some of the innovations that have emanated from these 279 research and infrastructure projects, including 22 through UMN and/or Mayo clinic startup companies. 16 innovations have reached clinical trials, so the first in human kind of approaches, either through technology or pharmacological therapies. Partnership funding has led to 7 innovations reaching real-world use. So this is not only translation to humans, but translation to patients as a result of this funding program. On the next slide, examples of so the snapshots, if you will, of some of the scientific, clinical, and economic impact is represented. What I love about this representation is how real it is in reflecting the distribution between the university and Mayo. This is so in all of these programs, you see representation from the university and Mayo. And as you can see with each of these five examples, we have a distribution of who the leader is. On one program, it might have been the University of Minnesota. On the next program, it might have been Mayo. But irrespective, there was partnership along the way. So the first example, transcatheter aortic valve from engineering tissues. The idea behind this is in grafts for congenital heart disease, which commonly require multiple surgeries, incredible morbidity, and high risk of mortality in children born, for example, with anatomical variations of their cardiovascular system. The design of this program was to enable the deployment of grafts that would be biological in their own nature, rather than only derived from various kinds of plastics, for example, and therein grow into the patient because it's part of their own biology, and therefore saving them potential surgeries down the line. The next that is discussed, the clinical microbiome analysis. You know, one can think of the microbiome, if you will, as the canary in the coal mine. And that canary can be in a number of coal mines. That coal mine can be us. That can be within our gastrointestinal tract or our skin or other reservoirs in our bodies, or it could be our soil. And that the microbiota provides an opportunity for us to see perhaps before we have other signs, other evidence of abnormalities. And in this particular program, the clinical microbiome analysis program, this was the generation of a clinical grade program that enabled the analysis of the microbiota.
Sorry, we're going to get your slides up.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. So we have your slides up here now. Thank you for kind of pitching in and taking care of it before we had it up there. So next time you come, because we want you back again, just make sure you bring your own computer ready to go, because there was a little miscommunication. So please continue, Mr. Crawford.
Madam Chair, thank you, and I'm very grateful to your patience and to the committee. And if I am so fortunate to be welcomed back, I will definitely do that.
Dr. Crawford, you will definitely be welcome back, as will the University of Minnesota and the Mayo Clinic partnership. We definitely want to hear from you again, so I appreciate that. While we're pausing, Representative Robbins, do you want to ask your question at this juncture, or do you want him to continue the presentation? Representative Robbins, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just don't want to forget. So appreciate all the examples in detail. And in the example you just cited about the engineered tissue, you talked about how, some of these products, the innovation here is that it's grown from the patient's own tissue, and what a revolution that is. But there are still use of plastics in a lot of biomedical products. And one of the concerns I've heard raised is the PFAS ban that was enacted last year is really adversely affecting the use of biomedical engineered products, because the law didn't differentiate between water-soluble PFAS and non-water-soluble PFAS. So I just wondered, is that a concern for you, and is this something you are also researching and looking at, or has it not been a concern with the research that you are conducting or that you've been known to be involved in?
Dr. Crawford or Dr. Wiedemann?
Madam Chair, Representative Robbins, thank you for the question. This is an important question whose details I will seek the opportunity to receive to obtain more detailed information. But what I can tell you is within our partners, for example, in the College of Science and Engineering at the University of Minnesota, there is a very strong cohort into material science and to understanding the impact and sustainability in a number of domains. So sustainability for the environment, sustainability and safety for humans. So I think that it's very likely that PFAS and the question of water solubility versus insolubility is a topic of investigation within our College of Science and Engineering, and if not there, perhaps one of our other colleges or institutes, and I will personally look into that. So I'm grateful for the question.
Representative Robbins, do you have a follow-up? Okay. Great. Now we're back into the slides. Thank you for your patience. And Dr. Crawford, if you want to continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of other high-level vignettes. The third, ultra-small wireless radiation sensors for in vivo dosimetry and cancer therapy. This is in partnership with a startup company called Voxy Health that has a number of successful ventures. And in this particular one that was funded and that ultimately led to a partnership with Boston Scientific, allows for the detection in a minimal profile of radiation sensor in the context of normally administered cancer therapy. Voxy Health also has gone on and developed a small molecule profiling platform that enables early detection for cancers and other disease states as well.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will not interrupt on every single one of these points, but I just have to brag. Voxy Health is a constituent of mine. I'm very well aware of their research. It's fantastic, and they are one of the groups that I was mentioning earlier that they're looking to use the cancer detection profile to maybe be used in other applications. So I'm so grateful to see this made the list. They're just doing phenomenal work. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Robbins. Dr. Crawford, you've got a very interested group of people here, so please continue.
Madam Chair, Representative Robbins, in the committee, I'm very grateful and excited to hear about the enthusiasm around the work that's being done at the University of Minnesota and in partnership with our friends and colleagues at Mayo. The next technology that has received investment from the Minnesota Mayo Partnership that has gone on and realized development into a startup company called Numeric is represented next. This is a technology that allows for the application of what's called needle thoracostomy. So imagine someone suffers a punctured lung. This can happen spontaneously. This can happen in the context of an injury. This can happen in someone who might might have emphysema or any other number of conditions. And when that happens, a percentage of the time, that can become life-threatening, because the lung can actually retract and then leave space in the chest in which the lung is not working effectively. That condition is called a tension pneumothorax, and it is very much life-threatening. So one of the challenges is, in the context of taking care of an individual who's suffering from this condition in the field, it's relatively easily diagnosed by anyone who can manage a stethoscope and understands how to use that well. But managing that in the field is a huge challenge. One of the key signals in the field that this is going well, meaning I am treating this tension pneumothorax while I'm transporting this individual who is suffering either in an ambulance or in a helicopter, is the insertion of a tube that allows for the evacuation of air. One of the key observations in that context is hearing that air. That audible sound. If that is not readily available to someone who's in a helicopter or in an ambulance on a road, that becomes a real challenge. And that makes the caregiver hamstrung in that context. So what this technology does is allow a visual representation of you are there, you are where you need to be, and then obviously you can concomitantly manage and observe the patient while that therapy is being delivered. So in a way, a very simple technology, but with profound impact, and obviously of great pride to us in the state. And then finally, a recent development around Duchenne muscular dystrophy treatment. A startup company called Mayo that formed in 2022. In 2024, the FDA approved the first IND, investigational new drug, for an induced pluripotent cell. So this is an adult cell that's been converted into a state in which it could then become any other kind of cell in the body. Has been applied and will be for clinical trial for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a condition that afflicts 20,000 babies worldwide every year. There are related muscular dystrophies that dramatically increase the number of individuals afflicted with this condition. And this technology platform, this suite that is being developed by Mayo, which is a partnership, again, with the University of Minnesota and Mayo, that will allow for this to develop a new set of therapies for these conditions. Our most recent awards, just hot off the press, if you will, in 2024 are represented here. I won't go into as much detail about these because these are still very much new and developing, but they do represent a process that my colleague, Dr. Wiedemann, is going to discuss in terms of our governance process. But these four were recent recipients of awards based on an iterative peer review process that allows them to initiate their research programs. But at a high level, I can tell you the first is designed to understand the relationship between obesity, cardiometabolic complications of obesity, and dementia, which is an increasingly recognized challenge. The next is a project that looks at the relationship between inflammation and cardiovascular disease. The next is relevant to all of our proliferation of interest in vaccines, and there's very validated set of reasons to be aware and concerned about the implications of vaccine technologies. And the next project is designed to help understand how our immune system responds to vaccines and other forms of therapy that modulate the immune system, including for infections as well as cancer, of course. And then the next is related to a very difficult condition called pulmonary hypertension, in which blood pressure in the lungs becomes elevated at a very high rate to such an extent that the heart cannot manage that pressure that is faced within the lungs. And this is a fundamental project trying to understand some of the pathogenesis of that condition. So, Madam Chair, if it pleases you and the committee, I can now turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Wiedemann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may take just a moment to introduce myself to the committee. My name is Nathan Wiedemann. I am the Director of Translation of Practice at Mayo Clinic. I serve as the administrative lead for Mayo for the Minnesota Partnership. I've been with Mayo for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was a U.S. military officer. I retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Army, mostly doing research and development prior to coming here. I am not a medical doctor. I'm a mechanical engineer, and my job is to help accelerate those technologies more rapidly to the patient. That's through all sorts of development and technology assistance. So if I may, Madam Chair, we have been working to improve and constantly look at new ways and better ways to manage responsibly these funds and to make sure that we are getting the highest opportunities, the highest potential opportunities funded and moving forward. And we have teams providing oversight of the execution of these programs. We have, starting at the top, obviously, the oversight of this committee and a regular submission of a report that gets submitted each year, each fiscal year in June to the governor's office, which we have done reliably every year since the program began. Executive oversight for the Minnesota Partnership is provided by our executive committee. Both Dr. Crawford and myself are members of the executive committee, as is Dr. Prakash and Jane Welter, joining us also from the University of Minnesota. So we're responsible for the performance of these state-funded programs, including the Minnesota Partnership, provide guidance, direction to the individual program leadership and administrative teams. This executive committee creates a framework for the program funding allocation. We review the annual reports, plans, progress reports, and outcomes for each of the different funding programs that we oversee and coordinate as necessary for the different program leadership. So we're oversight across the Minnesota Partnership to make sure that we are funding the things that need to get funded, that we are providing guidance to the individual teams so that they can execute the funding properly. The program leadership, if you would go to the next slide here, the program leadership, administration, financial management, we have for the Minnesota Partnership and for other state-funded programs, a group of scientific leaders from both the University of Minnesota and Mayo setting the scientific direction for the program, ensuring that we have an expert review of the project proposals, both from within and without Mayo and the university. We provide administrative financial management through a cross-institutional program management team. There's an equal balance or equal number of members from both the university and from Mayo on all three of these levels of management. The PMT, that program management team, is responsible for the oversight, management, facilitation of all the program operations and administrative responsibilities where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. They coordinate the requests, scientific reviews of the project funding applications, as well as project implementation and the management functions. So we have research teams providing regular progress reports, financial updates to the program management team, and then any issues, concerns raised up to the level of the program leadership or even to the executive committee as needed. Research teams are required to provide those final progress reports. We retain those. We use those to generate outcomes and updates to leadership. The budget's reviewed quarterly between that management team and the program finance manager. Our projects are tracked for a minimum of 5 years following the project closeout to monitor for outcomes, startups, commercialization activities, things like that, things that are meaningful to the program and to the state of Minnesota. Going to the next the kind of metrics, I'm going to hand it back off to Dr. Crawford.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wiedemann. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep. Dr. Crawford, sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Dr. Crawford, continue.
We have a number of metrics of success, but not an infinite number of metrics that we apply, and we track these carefully. Those data are available upon request, of course. Publications are the currency within science. Publications are the unit of success and measure that allows investigators in academic settings to demonstrate to grant reviewers that there have been strong outcomes. Success within the peer-reviewed literature indicates to grant reviewers that there is a rigor of prior research that suggests that this is an area of investigation that is worthy of investigating more because there is a likelihood for a return on that investment. So publications are, in the academic setting, important. Sustainability through follow-on funding is of critical importance as well. We don't seek for the partnership invested resources to be the end of the line, recognizing that in some circumstances that the line of investigation that was initiated might have to be retuned and refitted, and that's a natural part of the discovery process. But nonetheless, even that process of failure is one that is leveraged and is advantageous. But commonly, where we're investing and where we see in some of these vignettes, we see great success. And so the opportunity to recover follow-on funding to support ongoing investigation, to increasingly progress towards improvement of human health and human lives is the primary objective for our program. Advancement of intervention to the next stage of testing or regulatory approval. This is where we would partner with our various units within the university and at Mayo to ensure that we're moving forward in a manner that allows us, for example, to proceed into clinical trials in a transparent and compliant manner, of course. Licensing to existing companies is obviously a biomarker of success about which we obviously like to promote, and we're very excited. Products on the market or otherwise accessible outside of a research setting, obviously a great marker of success. And new company formation, of course. And as I believe it was mentioned earlier, not all companies are going to achieve the realization, of course, of ultimately being acquired because that technology was so successful that it was able to reach wide scale to a multinational corporation, for example. But some of the technologies do. And so it's exciting for us to be able to cultivate in this incubator, as I mentioned earlier, some of these early to mid-stage projects, and also have the line of sight to partnerships with great partner companies and multinationals here, for example, in the medical alley domain. So, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a question before we go to, we're going to switch back to Zoom in just a minute, but Representative Robbins.
Thank you. I appreciate this deep dive. I've been on the committee already a term and didn't really know much about this, so I appreciate it. I am curious, it's a partnership with the Mayo. The state has been putting in quite a bit of money, $16 million, I believe, this year and next year. So what is the Mayo Foundation putting in?
Madam Chair, Representative Robbins.
Dr. Wiedemann.
Thank you. This is supported by Mayo through the administrative time and leadership of our management team. We provide, in partnership with our partners at the University of Minnesota, the oversight and management of this work. We seek out new opportunities for this funding to make an impact, and so we seek to, as much as possible, responsibly provide opportunities for that funding to impact patients throughout Minnesota and the world. Madam Chair, if we could also ask Dr. Prakash to participate in that conversation.
Thank you. We did get him back now, so we will go and see if he has an answer for that. I'm not sure that he heard the question, so Representative Robbins, just to make sure that he heard the question, would you state it one more time and we'll get Dr. Prakash up.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Dr. Prakash. Thank you for joining us. I stated that the state in the current biennium is putting in $16 million and next biennium as well, and I wondered what the Mayo Foundation is contributing financially to this partnership.
Dr. Prakash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Robbins. So as Dr. Wiedemann mentioned, we provide, in addition to the leadership and management aspects that were already discussed, we also provide access to the many cores and our colleagues and laboratories to do the research, as well as access to, for example, our entities like Mayo Clinic Ventures and others who can help with intellectual property development, et cetera. That was also mentioned for other aspects of research growth. And so, therefore, I don't think we have necessarily dollar contributions that are explicitly assigned to this as much as in-kind contributions. Thank you.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. I think this is something we should explore more fully as a committee as we look at the budget. Certainly, we're grateful for Mayo's partnership, but they get a lot of state money in various forms, and I know not all of it runs through this committee, but I would like to better understand the relationship and make sure that we're truly partners in this process. Thank you.
Representative Robbins, you are on the right track. That is why they are here. And like I had said, in my tenure here at the legislature, now in my 13th year, I don't recall a presentation like this. So I'm going to ask just a very simple question. So as Representative Robbins said, it's $16 million in the biennium. And, what does this partnership produce out of that $16 million? So you've talked a lot about high-level stuff. I guess I'd like to know what's the totality of all the things that you just discussed about research, and then the state's $16 million that goes into that. What's the total? And the state's putting in $16 million, and what is being done with that $16 million? Dr. Crawford?
Madam Chair, thank you. So the $16 million is invested directly into the research programs through the 4 pillars around discovery, translation centers, as well as technology commercialization. So those dollars go directly with supervision and oversight, of course, to the investigators. The components of operationalizing the program, including its administration, which is, as Dr. Wiedemann discussed, the executive level committee as well as a program leadership committee. This is offered through faculty and staff professional time that is resourced through other funding sources at the university or at Mayo. These are individuals that commonly are, in the case of many faculty, for example, providing their time as a service for peer review or for a secondary level of review of analysis after that first phase of peer review and making the very difficult decision of ultimately selecting awards. But the investment itself, that $16 million per biennium, that goes to the investigators that are selected for further pursuing their work.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford, or Dr. Crawford. And so what is the total budget? So this is a part of a total. What is the total budget for that research, that partnership? Dr. Crawford.
Madam Chair, my understanding, and I may need to fill in gaps, and I'm, of course, if given the privilege, I'll be delighted to do that. With respect to these awards form the totality of awards that support the projects that are proposed for that. So it really does circumscribe the progression towards that work. Academic funding proceeds in a manner that there are pools of resources that may be available to investigators when they've been successful in competing for it, and those resources are allocated specifically to that project. There may be opportunities to transparently engage in mechanisms of cost sharing, but that has to be navigated with each of the sponsors. And so when a request, for example, is made, which I have to identify if there even has been one in the program, for asking for an alternative source of funding to augment the project, then that has to be reviewed, of course, and it is done by the program leadership team and the executive committee, of course.
So, Dr. Crawford, on the slide that you talked about examples of scientific and clinical economic impact, you listed 5 specific examples. Would that be, so the $16 million that's been since 2006, I think you said, so I'm not sure when you started getting state funding, but from the moment you start getting state funding, would these be completely paid for by the grant that you received from the state? Or is this a joint venture between Mayo, you, and some of the state dollars? Mr. Crawford, or Dr. Crawford?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. So, yeah, indeed, so the $16 million per biennium is the allocation for which we're grateful that is distributed to the programs that are awarded after the process of application and peer review. Those 5 examples that I presented are examples of programs that received allocations based on an award request. It's a budget that was provided by the applying investigators. And then after successful completion of the rounds of peer review and then ultimately program leadership team review, that award is then conferred with observation and expectations of progress reporting at an interval of yearly in that process. So the 16 million is out per biennium is allocated to the totality of the awards, and approximately 20 awards per year across those 4 pillars are distributed. So that our objective is to distribute the totality of the allocation within a biennium to the investigators across those 4 pillars.
Thank you. So Dr. Crawford and Dr. Wiedemann, if you could come back to the committee with a little bit more granular information, as in this is what the state allocated, a direct appropriation, which, as you know, is a little unusual. So a direct appropriation from this committee, it's been done for many, many years, longer than I've been here. And specifically, where did those dollars go? So which research, where did it go? What was the result? I think that's what we're asking, right? I think Representative Robbins and Scott and others are asking that very specific question. So if you could come back with, this is what was given, this is what was used, this is what you did with the money. Very, very simple. Representative Scott, I believe you had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want for clarification, Dr. Crawford, you're the Vice Dean for Research for the entire medical school. Is that correct, or just in conjunction with this Mayo partnership?
Dr. Crawford.
Madam Chair, Representative Scott, thank you for the question. Yes, I am responsible for the entire portfolio for the research operation for the University of Minnesota Medical School. And this activity is one important component of my portfolio. The University of Minnesota Medical School has a $400 million research expenditure portfolio, and it is my responsibility to ensure that is in service of Minnesotans and continues to grow in service of Minnesotans.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have some questions. It's sort of bioethical or whatever, but I'm wondering what kind of research you might be doing related to sex transition treatments and surgeries on youth, underage people.
Dr. Crawford or Dr. Wiedemann? Who would like to try to take that one?
Madam Chair and Representative Scott, thank you for the question. That is a gap in my knowledge that I'll need to fill. What I can tell you is that in preparing this presentation for today, this particular allocation has not funded any gender reassignment or affirmation research, and so I can speak to that. And with regard to the partnership today, with regard to investigation that's going on at the University of Minnesota, I don't have that information at this time, but I will acquire and deliver that information upon request, of course.
Okay. And
Representative Scott.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I don't know if Dr. Wiedemann would like to answer that from Mayo's perspective.
Dr. Wiedemann.
Madam Chair, Representative Scott, I echo Dr. Crawford's statement. There has been no use of funds from the Minnesota Partnership for Biotechnology and Medical Genomics for the type of research you're describing for pediatric or youth gender affirmation or gender transition. I do not have the information regarding Mayo writ large, and we will come back to you with that.
Oh, one more, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what I'd also like to know is what evidence base the university or Mayo in this case might use on, for a basis for their pediatric sex reassignment surgeries. And I have a list of other questions that I'd like to have you be prepared to answer, and I do know that it's being done to the tune of over $8 million at the University of Minnesota. And from some of your government affairs folks, I got quite a spreadsheet on what's being done in that area, and it's troubling to me. And so I look forward to getting some further answers on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Scott. A very hot topic right now. Representative Allen, last question, and we are near adjournment. So.
Oh, perfect. Just thinking it would seem my life is intertwined with Mayo everywhere I turn, whether it's the genomics work you did with my brother when he had cancer and your amazing team over in oncology being able to map that genome, or my sister who worked over in the oncology department and research, mitigating a bunch of the work, or mitigating the impacts of breast cancer treatments within patients, which got me thinking that, with everything changing over the last year as it pertains to the impacts, what we're seeing within research, and then research is conducted by people, and what is going to be the impact of sick and safe time and family paid leave on your budget in terms of being able to keep those critical researchers in place doing the work that you need to do in order to be able to advance humanity.
And Representative Allen, is that more directed to the University of Minnesota or Mayo? Because we have, and then they're kind of a partnership too. So,
Madam Chair, that would be both, actually.
Okay. So who would like to try to take that, or would you like to bring that answer back? Because Dr. Crawford.
Madam Chair, Representative Allen, thank you for the question. I'll answer first. So this is, I'm grateful for the question, not only because it's coming from this esteemed committee, but also because it reflects an area of activity that's near and dear to me. When you're serving in the role that I have the privilege to serve in, a key component of what I'm assigned to do with those I'm privileged to partner with is to ensure if you'll allow the metaphor, the assembly of the best athletes on the field, and the preservation of the athletes that we have on the field, on our field. This is a very important issue. So common features include, the assembly of thematically aligned units, so that there are like-minded individuals present, where we have an opportunity to demonstrate our resources are as strong as anywhere in the nation or in the world, and that is to say our infrastructure, for example, our buildings, our research animal resources, our ability to conduct clinical trials are on the very cutting edge. Our opportunities to engage benefactors through philanthropy are as good as they are anywhere in the world. Those are key features that whether it's at the recruitment level or the retention level, that's where I am a substantial part of each day. And I'm excited. I'm emboldened by the challenge. But we do face challenges. And we don't always have resources that are state-of-the-art in every single dimension. And then we have to, of course, make tough decisions where we're going to allocate our effort to try to have those opportunities to retain and recruit those best athletes on the field, if you will.
Thank you both. We are actually over time, and we do have another committee coming in, and others have to get to committee. So I'm going to adjourn us for the day, but thank you so much, and we look forward to your answers in the future. We are adjourned.